The first generation 2 series might just be the second hardest BMW to fit larger wheels and tires onto. But if you follow this guide, I promise you won't have any rubbing or clearance issues. Just the widest wheel and tire setup you can get on this car without cutting your fenders.
As you can see, I'm running the Rex Racing Wheels R102 Evo in their brushed clear finish. This is an 18 by 8.5 inch wheel with a 35 offset, wrapped in Michelin 235/40 all season 4s. This is a forged wheel that can be made in any size configuration, which is really good for us F22 owners because our wheel options are very limited. In this guide, we'll cover wheels, tires, and suspension. So trust me when I say this. If your wheels and tires are safe to run for a while, do suspension first.
Suspension companies design their coilovers and lowering springs with the OEM wheels in mind. This will allow you to use your original setup as a reference point for going wider or taller. You may even be able to test fit different wheel and tire combinations before you make your final decision.
With your suspension in, now we can move on to wheels, which, unless you have an M2 and need that extra brake clearance, stick to the 18s.
Going up to 19s will be a nightmare to fit, and your ride quality is going to suffer. If the wheel gap really bothers you that much, go up in tire profile with the 18s, trust me. And 17s are only an option if you plan to stick with the smaller calipers.
The 18 by 8.5 with a 35 offset is the largest wheel that you can run up front without spacers or clearance issues while still getting that flush fitment. Now the rears you can go wider, but I do prefer a square setup for better tire longevity. If this is also important to you, but you want that wider look in the rear, you can run spacers here. Personally, I think it looks good even without them, so I wouldn't push them out too much more if you want to stay in the wheel well.
Now, if you're wondering how I got to this exact size without any measuring, that's thanks to websites like Apex Wheels and Fitment Industries. When you combine the measurements from Apex along with the pictures from Fitment Industries, you're able to really see what the different wheel and tire configurations look like. And if you're lucky, some people on Fitment Industries websites even list their suspension setup and if they needed to roll their fenders. So I highly recommend that you combine the information from these two websites to get you the fitment you want without any rubbing issues. In terms of rear wheel drive or X-Drive cars, I haven't had any issues fitting on the 18 by 8.5 with a 35 offset. So no spacers, and in some cases, no camber dialed in. But there's one caveat. The tire needs to be a 225/40/18. Even with the Michelin All Season 4's high tread wear, there was no rubbing at all. So I'm confident that any tire of this size, regardless of brand or type, will fit. Just expect a slight stretch, a look some of you may even prefer. If this isn't your thing, you could go with a 245/35 tire with 1.5 to 2 degrees of camber. Just expect some premature tire wear, even with proper rotations. If you don't like that option or can't adjust camber, you could go down to an 8-inch wheel with a 30 offset. This will still give you a near flush look on the car without that stretched tire look. Now, if your conversion calculator is saying that's too much tire for an 8-inch wheel, you always have to add 1 inch for the raised edges. This is why a 225 will look stretched on an 8.5-inch wheel and neutral on an 8-inch. Now, as you're shopping, you might not see many 18 by 8-inch wheels with 30 offsets. And that's where I have something special for you. After talking it over with Rex Racing Wheels, they agreed to give everybody that uses my link in the description 10% off their own set of forged wheels that you can custom make to any measurement along with any finish. Say for instance, an 18 by 8-inch wheel with a 30 offset. And in all honesty, this is the exact wheel size that I would recommend to anybody with an F22 and a 4-cylinder engine. Pairing that with a 225/40 tire, I think that this is the perfect sweet spot between performance and price. So long as you don't plan to drive up the horsepower numbers or aggressively track this car. Because even my M235i with about 400 horsepower on a stage 2 tune and full bolt-ons never had any issues. The benefits of the 8-inch option is that it's lighter and will be cheaper overall.
allowing you to get better tires like Michelin's or Continentals, which I would feel more confident in, arguing the tire compound is more important than going up 1 or 2 sizes with a cheaper brand. However, if you really want that 8.5-inch wheel, or if you have an inline 6, we have 2 more tire sizes to cover. Since we touched on the 245/35 earlier, let's start there. The 4S's will fit with 1.5 to 2 degrees of camber. To dial that in, you'll need camber plates or adjustable control arms.
Between these options, I would recommend camber plates, as it's the cheaper option and you can do it along with your coilovers, eliminating the need of a spring compressor and 2 additional installs. By introducing camber from the lower control arm, you're also going to introduce positive caster. And this is simply because of the geometry of the arms in relation to the wheel assembly. So if you don't want your inner fender liner to rub, you're also going to need the thrust arm. And I highly recommend going with something adjustable here, like the SPLs versus the fixed length M arms. With the very limited space that we have in here, we need all the fine adjustment we can get. And it's for this specific headache, along with that price point, that I recommend that if these arms are in good condition, go with the camber plate for now for adjusting camber.
Plus, they'll give you better shock responsiveness as the monoball can align itself with the strut as the camber is adjusted. And if you're thinking of getting stiffer springs in the future, you'll only need a new perch when the time comes. The 245/35 was able to work with the KW springs because it has the thinnest sidewalls of all the tires we covered so far. Plus, the 4S's is a summer tire with a lower tread wear, so no fender rolling was even required. However, a 245/40 tire won't fit unless you roll the fender and modify your suspension, because the current 235/40 setup definitely gave me some trouble, albeit with the taller all-season 4s. Even with 2.5 degrees of camber, the suspension height maxed out, and rolled fenders, it still rubbed towards the front where the bumper and fender meet. To fix this, I went with stiffer Swift springs up front, almost double the rate of the KWs, and with that, no more rubbing. And to my surprise, there wasn't a big trade-off in comfort. Personally, I enjoy it more than the KW springs, because it gets rid of that floating effect with the softer spring rate. So the next challenge will be the 4S's in a 245/40 configuration. The thing to look at here is the overall radius, and although it's a little wider, with this current setup, it might just work, because I still have room to go up with the suspension and its new springs. Also keep in mind that within a brand, all seasons are usually taller than their summer counterparts. And for those of you in the Bay Area, my friends over at Vex Motorsports are also giving you special pricing on wheels, tires, installation, and even ceramic coating. Just tell them Fritz sent you. As for the M235i, now that the Swift springs have had a chance to settle and the rubbing is gone, I'm absolutely loving this setup. This is actually my first set of forged wheels and come in 1 pound lighter than my last set, or 5 pounds less than stock. In terms of wheel production and quality, forged is the absolute best in terms of lightweight durability. Essentially, they take a giant block of aluminum and apply 10,000 tons of pressure to give the wheel its initial shape, then machine out the rest, including the face. This allows them to make the cool designs and shave off weight from areas like the spokes without sacrificing strength, which is what also allows them to bore out the center for that big brake clearance. But if you plan on going really big, like M carbon ceramics, or if you have an M car, you'll want to step up to the 19s. Another thing I optioned for on these wheels is the paintless knurling that will really grab onto and hold the tires in place. As for the finish, you don't necessarily have to get it in brushed clear. It's just something that I really wanted after the bronze look. So whatever look or style you want, just ask for it. Now, let's cover the most important thing.
Although Rex Racing Wheels is a relatively new company, they assured to me that all their wheels undergo rigorous FEA testing. They stand behind their wheels so much that they're willing to offer a replacement program to the original owner for the life of the wheel. Now this is only for street applications, so no track damage. But when you consider that this is the only wheel company that I found that's willing to offer a replacement program with the forged wheel in a 2 Series fitment across several faces and several designs. I think that this is the best value for us currently. So when you're done selecting your wheel configuration and finish, and it hits your doorstep, the very first thing you need to do is protect it, which you can check out in this video. And I'll see you in that one.